I like how KJP makes me feel. She gives me confidence that I could do that job. Former Biden press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre announced that she's writing a tell-all book about the Biden administration. In response, people are saying, thanks, but I just wanted a Big Mac. And when Joe Biden was asked if he's going to read the book, he replied, over my soon-to-be dead body.
When Greg Gutfeld took over, the press briefing swiftly took an unexpected turn. He responded to Karine Jean-Pierre's standard talking points with scathing humor and criticism. Gutfeld didn't hold back, challenging her claims live on air with ETH's humor and jokes, transforming the affair from a standard news conference into something more akin to an animated TV piece. This was what it looks like when a public figure is criticized for both facts and jokes, if you've ever wondered.
Karine Jean-Pierre wrote a book, and her fans are already sharpening their crayons. And it's just what we need, a tell-all from the woman who spent 2 years telling everyone that Joe just had a cold and not rigor mortis. If the title hadn't already been taken, it should be called Art of the Steal.
Every day, Karine Jean-Pierre arrives in the press briefing room looking prepared for a show. However, we frequently receive a combination of detours and diversions in place of definitive responses. Sometimes the briefings feel more like a planned routine than an update because of the cue cards, blank binder, and practiced lines.
It says she's leaving the Democratic Party. I say God bless her. Not many people have the patience to wait in a line that long. In her book, she says the White House was broken. This after 2 years along a president who wasn't housebroken. But she only realized this after she stopped getting paid to defend it. But like Jake Tapper's book, it's a new genre of Biden tell-alls that should be subtitled, I had no idea because I'm severely retarded.
Seeing her explain things now feels more perplexing than beneficial. It frequently results in a maze of conflicting messages and ambiguous responses. Greg Gutfeld answered with a mixture of humor and incredulity, rather than launching into a vicious tirade. What transpired was more of a light roast than a serious debate, and the press secretary found it difficult to follow along.
Realizes she was carrying water for a man whose brain was as wet as his pants. Remember, this is the same broad who stared America in the face and said this.
Comments were made in that report about that, obviously about his memory that we don't believe lives in reality.
80's the new 40. Didn't you hear?
He is as sharp as ever. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith.
And it's not true, right? The president wasn't wandering.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
He's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
Yeah.
Greg Gutfeld arrived with a clear brain and a keen sense of humor. Karine seems to lose her game only because of that. Her responses frequently come across as delayed and ambiguous when it comes to giving genuine answers, akin to a government office that is not in a hurry or a weather app that is unable to provide an accurate forecast.
You couldn't keep up with Joe. Sorry, Joe couldn't keep up with FDR in the 100-yard dash. And I'm talking right now. Damn. But she expected us to believe she couldn't keep up with the guy who had to have an electric fence put up around the White House so he wouldn't in the neighbor's yard.
No one dodges a question. Quite like Karine Jean-Pierre, it's practically her superpower. If avoiding accountability were a sport, she'd win gold every time. Greg Gutfeld only needed a few sharp remarks and well-timed reactions to make her responses unravel. You don't even need to fact-check her. Just listen and see if anything adds up. Spoiler, it usually doesn't. The best part? Gutfeld didn't need dramatic takedowns, just a few clever comments to leave her visibly flustered. Half the time, her answers are so scattered you can't tell if she's talking about the border, inflation, or climate. After months on the job, you'd expect more clarity, but instead, we get the same routine. Dodge the question, shift the topic, blame the last administration, throw in buzzwords. It often feels like she's guessing her way through. Her job is to inform, but most of the time, it sounds more like stalling. Gutfeld didn't even need notes. Her confusion spoke for itself.
Too dumb to notice Biden was a mess, or was she just dishonest? Pick your poison, moron or mercenary. Now there's a great name for her book. I'm going with mercenary, because this whole book tour didn't spring from a burst of guilt. According to Politico, she was copying her publicist on emails while still press secretary. So she was planning this from the podium. She's like a pilot who puts on his parachute and oxygen mask while your plane's leaving the airport.
Let's be honest, this isn't new. Karine Jean-Pierre has been dodging tough questions since day one. If evading responsibility were a job title, she'd be promoted by now. Her idea of preparation seems to be wearing glasses to look serious and flipping through that massive binder, more for show than substance. Every time she opens it, the answers sound more like vague instructions than real information, like reading a shampoo label and having no idea what it means. Greg Gutfeld couldn't ignore it. It probably looked like she was prepping for a librarian. Shift at a gas station. The best part? He didn't need to exaggerate. The real statements from that podium were already absurd. She once claimed the border was secure when it clearly wasn't, and said the economy was booming while grocery prices hit record highs. Her version of reality seems more detached from what most Americans are actually living.
Crisis of faith, it was a business plan. She didn't leave the Democrat Party. She managed her exit like Pelosi dumping stocks before she signs the corporate tax hike. She was even pining for a spot on The View, which is like angling for the best seat in a garbage truck. But she didn't get the gig, probably because she refused their lunch bucket of thawed mackerel. That's what you feed the talent at SeaWorld.
And then there are the endless excuses. Karine Jean-Pierre always finds a way to shift blame, like a child insisting the crayon moved on its own. If something major went wrong in DC, she'd probably blame everyone but herself. Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to interrupt. He just let her talk. And the more she spoke, the more tangled her vague claims and recycled phrases became. Eventually, you realize there's no need to argue. Just let her finish, and the contradictions expose themselves. The twist? She still seems convinced she's winning people over. Honestly, even her binder looks unconvinced. Like a new chapter in How Not to Run a Press Briefing. She could probably publish it as The Art of the Deflection. Gutfeld never had to raise his voice. The whole exchange felt more like a late-night comedy sketch than a real press update. Karine has a way of turning yes or no questions into long, confusing answers, like a miniseries nobody asked for. Even a GPS would give up and say, "You're on your own."
Liable lefties are roasting her, but it serves him right. After all, she was their pick, a historic first. Black, lesbian, and board certified by visiting angels. But you know it's bad when DC operatives call it a grift. Hell, that's like Taylor Swift calling you a 6. But they say that she was ineffectual, unprepared, needed to be coddled, and couldn't manage a team. What's that sound like? DEI. What happens when you hire someone based on identity and not merit?
Karine Jean-Pierre carries herself with so much confidence, you'd think reading a memo could solve a national crisis. She often looks in control at briefings, but her answers say otherwise, more like policy not found. Greg Gutfeld didn't even need to step in with facts. She unraveled on her own, trying to explain things that made no sense. At one point, she used a family dinner story to explain inflation, like the audience needed a bedtime story instead of straight answers. Her main point? Republicans are to blame for high prices. That might work in a soundbite, but it doesn't explain why gas feels pricier than therapy. Gutfeld just smirked, like someone watching a magician drop every card. And who could blame him? Her answers were flashy but empty. At this point, she's more of an excuse secretary than a press secretary. Her whole strategy seems to be, talk long enough and people will forget the original question. Sometimes it even works, mainly because viewers are too busy wondering if she's answering or just stringing together buzzwords.
I think what was the toughest thing to see in the 3 weeks was there was a disconnect for me. What was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly As my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBold said, it was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before.
Then, there are times when Karine Jean-Pierre mimics the tone of former presidents like Obama in an attempt to appear authentically presidential.
Done more to secure the border and to deal with this issue of immigration than anybody else. He really has.
There's a word for that. Pathological.
However, it frequently sounds as though she is reading aloud from the back of a cereal box rather than conveying strong messages. We renew our dedication to equity, community, and strength today. The next query. Greg Gutfeld just held up a mirror. He didn't come to dispute, and it expressed bewilderment rather than fire. If poor communication had a face, it would most likely resemble hers, replete with the peculiar grin she wears when serious problems arise. Ukraine, immigration, or anything else that needs a straightforward response. The peculiar aspect, she actually seems to think everything is going well. She continues, full of confidence, even while public trust subtly erodes around her, much like the band on the Titanic played as the ship sank. Gutfeld did not have to yell. As she attempted to address significant issues, he simply pointed out the obvious.